no privatisations in the next term of government. I've made that very clear, and I'll be held to account by the New South Wales Parliament by tabling an election commitment update every 12 months.
Mr Minns, your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Kim, for your question. It's a big issue in this election campaign. Of course, Mr Perrottet said exactly the same thing in 2019. The problem with privatisation is as soon as you've sold everything off and you've got nothing else to sell, how do you build for the future of New South Wales? In this state, energy prices have jumped up 40% since 2014 and the electricity privatisation. They've gone up 20% since this time before the last state election in 2019. Now, we're the most tolled city on the face of the earth, and one company owns all or part of the M2, the M4, the M5, the M5 East, the M7, the M8, Cross City Tunnel, Lane Cove Tunnel, Eastern Distributor and North Connects. It's just too much. My big fear is they'll repeat the habit of a lifetime. Once the polls close, if they're re-elected, Sydney Water is out the door next, and I don't think this state can afford it.
All families and households across New South Wales are doing it tough right now, and we need to do everything we can to put downward pressure on household budgets, and we're doing that through over $7 billion in cost of living relief measures, $250 off every energy bill across New South Wales. In addition to that, our back-to-school vouchers, our active kids vouchers, giving kids the opportunity to play sport for the very first time. And at the same time, when it comes to tolls, a 40% rebate on tolls. But we also need to continue to build for the future. We need to build the schools and hospitals. We can't stall and go backwards. And the strong financial management in this state has ensured that we have more schools, more hospitals, and we've got to keep building the motorways. And by building the motorways, we ensure that people can spend more time with their families. That's what it's all about.
Teachers do an amazing job, and what they do is they often see something in a child that they don't see in themselves. And I bet everybody in this crowd can point to 2 or 3 teachers in their life that have literally changed their lives. So we've got to build teaching back up, the teaching profession in particular. My dad, public school teacher for 40 years, he joined the profession because he believed in public service, and it was a profession where you could earn enough to raise a family in a place like Sydney. For many families, those days are behind us. So we are going to convert 10,000 temporary teachers into permanent roles. Now, they're already working in New South Wales public education, but for some reason they're on temporary contracts. 40%, nearly 40% of teachers are on temporary contracts. Now, for a young teacher who's on a temporary contract in New South Wales, it's almost impossible to get financing from the bank to get a loan to buy your first home.
But our population is growing. As our population grows, we need it to grow well. And a lot of that growth will be in Western Sydney around the new airport. And that's why we've got to keep building the infrastructure, the schools and the hospitals. Those metro trains that Labor will not be building is so short-sighted, because that means as Western Sydney grows, those public transport connections will not be there for our children and their children. So we've got to keep building. As you build homes, you need to put the schools, the hospitals, the public transport, the metros and the motorways in. And that's why under Labor, they don't build motorways, they don't build the metro trains. Those projects will be cancelled, and as Sydney grows, it won't grow.
Okay.
Well, and many families right across New South Wales are doing it extremely tough. Businesses are doing it tough as well. Inflation is between 7 and 8%. And I need to tell you, New South Wales is the highest taxing jurisdiction in Australia. Tolls are up, taxes are up, fees are up, fines are up, charges are up. And I know for many people, they're doing it extremely tough. It's one of the reasons why we've committed to a $60 toll cap in Sydney for those that use motorways. For small businesses in particular, who I know are getting smashed as a result of energy prices, we're going to have a $315 rebate for them to keep their doors open. I've spoken to hot bread shops and small businesses right across New South Wales that say their biggest input cost at the moment is energy price spikes. So they're the immediate measures that we're going to pursue, as well as a massive tax cut for first home buyers. We're going to lift the stamp duty threshold from $650,000 all the way up to $800,000. You won't pay any stamp duty for a property below that number. But I think the best thing we could do for the long-term future of cost of living in New South Wales is stop the madness of privatisation. Because privatisation, directly in relation to ports, directly in relation to energy and toll roads, has meant you pay more in user charges just for living and working in a place like Sydney or a place like New South Wales. So we've given a commitment in relation to Sydney Water and Essential Energy. I note the Premier spoke about infrastructure. It's important to note Warragamba Dam that he says he'll build, it's not in the budget, $3 billion. He says he'll build the Northern Beaches Tunnel, $10 billion. A tunnel underneath the Blue Mountains, $10 billion. More metros for Western Sydney. Well, none of that is in the budget. And the only way you can build that kind of infrastructure, if it's completely unfunded, is to privatise assets owned by you, the people of New South Wales. We just won't do it.
Home or here today, that when you have a major budget costing, that you come clean and say what it's going to cost the taxpayers of New South Wales. And the wages policy from Labor, wages accounts for about 40% of the state's budget. By removing that cap, you unravel that cost, and that has real consequences. And what Chris is saying is that this major policy of giving increase for wages for public servants without telling anybody what it is would be akin in your own family budgets in releasing 40% of those costs and removing that cap. Imagine if you went home to your partner and you said, we're going to put a new kitchen in, a major renovation. Well, what's it going to cost? $0. And that's the costing that Chris has come up with.